how to use it in more efficient ways. I'm very pleased to introduce our two presenters today. I get to work closely with them, and I appreciate what they do and what their efforts, their talents, and what they bring. First, Mindy Lake is a senior business analyst. She's worked for the department for the last 3 years. I'm going to make sure I read this correctly so I get all of the things that she supports. So she now provides customer and technical support for the right-of-way contracting within CMS, Central EPM web application, Microsoft Professional, Project Management Office, and CoSign, the digital signature application. Mindy has a bachelor's degree in information systems from Southern Utah University. Kendall, and I think many of you know Kendall, and I really enjoy working with Kendall. He's the balance to the force on the fourth floor because he's the red guy and I'm the blue guy. We balance each other out. But Kendall currently is working as the project management engineer for Central Project Management with 4 years experience, mainly with Microsoft Project and scheduling. He has his master's degree in civil engineering with an emphasis in project management for the University of Utah. And I'm pleased to introduce them because I know these folks know what they're talking about. So I hope you enjoy what they have prepared for today. Turn it over to them. Oh, yes. Sign-in sheets. I've set those out, and they've put out some extra copies underneath. I put them underneath the sign-in list. That's if you want CEUs, you can sign that. Take one of those sheets, fill out your name and everything on it, and afterward you can come up and have one of the instructors sign the bottom of that for you. But I went ahead and sent them out on the clipboard. So if you need one, find a clipboard, get signed in on the front page, and then get one of those papers right behind it, and then you can come up and get them signed afterward. Kind of like asking you for your autograph when you're all done. So.
Alrighty. Well, we'll go ahead and get started with the presentation. First, I guess, thanks everyone for coming out. And some of this might be a refresher course. You guys have all been through some of our trainings to understand PMO, or Project Management Office. Something that's changed is all of you guys are used to going to Project Management Office through the web page that we normally go through that goes to the home page. Now I'm going to talk about something new that we've created, which is part of the Interchange. So Interchange is the hub that houses all of the SharePoint sites that we've created as Udot. And inside there's multiple facets. We have a pre-construction portal, a construction portal, and part of that pre-construction portal is Project Management Office. That's just one portion of it. We've built out more things. So I want to talk about something that we've built out for project teams. And what that is our projects page. And this isn't a requirement that every project has. It's something that we've created to help project managers and project teams. What I'll do is first show you how to create one of these pages and what can be found on them and how it can be useful to you as a project manager or as a project team member. The first thing you need to go to is instead of going to the normal website, which has a /PMO there, you just remove that off. And it's https://interchange.udot.utah.gov, and it'll show this page here. That's the home page of the Interchange. What you do is you click on this projects part up top, and you'll find one that says Projects Home. When you click on that Projects Home, it'll bring you to this page. This page is where all of our projects live. If you have a project that's been linked in PMO, you have the opportunity to be able to create a project site for it. What you need to do is click this Create New Project. By clicking that, it'll bring up a prompt that you'll have to fill in. So here you can see the thing that's important is that you fill out the bubble that says Pre-Construction Project. So that's what's going to marry it up to your PMO site, your schedule, and bring in all of those tasks that you've created in your schedule. Also, you need to make sure that you have the correct PIN. Those are the two parts that are important when filling this out, because that's how it's going to link up to everything that's in project. And then you fill out the rest of the information. If you don't fill out one of the fields, it won't let you move on. So you do have to put information in. But the two that are critical are those two fields to be correct, to be able to make sure that it marries up with your schedule in MS Project. So once you've done that and go back into the projects, you'll now see on the tab that any project page that you've created or are part of will now show on that drop-down list. So these are all the projects that I'm part of that have projects pages. I'm going to show you this test pin that I've created as a project page just to kind of give you an idea of what's available on those pages and what your project team could use them for. So when you launch that projects page by clicking on that project, this is what it's going to look like when you come into it first. There's a project overview section up at the top, there's team tasks, and there's project documents that belong to the project. On this, there's really 4 things you can do. Over here on this navigation window, it's kind of hard to see, but there's the home, which brings you back to this view. There's document submittals, tasks, meeting minutes, and design review. And I'll show slides of each of those things of what you can do with this to help project teams. The first part we'll go into is we'll talk about each of these 4 items. First one's going to be project overview. That's that top section that was showing. What shows on that project overview is it pulls in all your tasks that you have from MS Project Professional or your schedule. It brings in any that are overdue and shows them in the first part. And you can see here's one that's overdue. It says what the due date was. You can go status it here, so you don't have to go into PMO. You can status it from here, so you're not having to keep switching screens. Also, it says who's it's been assigned to. You can add comments to it. And then the next list is this due soon. If you clicked over here, this view details, it would then drop down all the lists of the tasks that are due soon. What due soon represents is something that's going to be ending in the next 2 weeks. It'll show up on that list. Any task that's on your schedule that's ending in the next 2 weeks. Then the next group is starting soon. That starting soon is any task that'll start in the next 2 weeks. So that can help your project teams understand what's going on the project. They get a quick overview of what's late, what's starting and ending in the next 2 weeks. It helps you as a project manager. Anyone that's on the project team will have access to that projects page. Or you can assign other people to have access to it. You just have to go give them rights to it, and we can teach you how to do that. But anyone that has an Active Directory ID, so every Udot employee can be assigned to any of these projects page to have view rights to it. Yes, that will be what gets originally loaded, but if you want others added, it's kind of like what we do in project. You can add other people on. Same process, that you can add more people to it to see it. Yes, consultants will be able to access this, and all this information is also available on their My Sites, which is another thing that's part of Interchanges that will be talked about later today. So that's the project overview. It's mainly just giving you a quick snapshot of what's going on in the project. Give you an idea what's completing, what's coming, and what is something critical for your team that's past due. The next section is our document submittals. So how you go to that is you click on that navigation, and you'll see there's the document submittals. Once you click on that, it's going to pull up a page, and there's 2 ways that we can do document submittals. And what's important about these document submittals is you can have a workflow assigned to them. So it's not just putting a document somewhere and then emailing and hoping that someone's going to go and do something with it. Now you can assign them due dates, and as soon as this person signs it, it's now going to send an email to the next person in the line what they need to do. So now we can have workflows assigned. And then if you pick this one that says documents with project-wise attributes, what it's going to do is once it finishes its workflow, it'll then automatically dump it into project-wise. So you're not having to put anything over. It's not yet. So it can get moved into project-wise. And it has all the attributes, the same thing as what project-wise has. And then there's, if you don't want to use project-wise attributes, say it's a document that doesn't need to go into project-wise, it just needs to go through the process so the team understands what's going on. You can send it through a workflow and have it go through that process. Yes. And what it is, I'll show you how to set up those workflows in these next slides. I just chose, for the demonstration of this, is going through one that had project-wise attributes. So once you click on that button, it's going to bring up a screen here that talks about we need to upload the file. In these 3 fields that are kind of hard to see, but they're around that square, is your same thing as your project-wise attributes. So first you have a filter, which is the same filter you'd find in project-wise. So if you're project manager, you can pick the project manager filter. You can pick those same filters that you need that you use in project-wise. And then you have your document type and then subtype, just like you would in project-wise when you're uploading a document. You can pick the correct ones that you need. You can browse, upload the document that you're looking for. That's the next step. So here you can see I've gone in, I filled out a general design deviations, design exceptions. It's one of the things I can see this being useful for is design exceptions, because now you can send it through a workflow for all the people that need to go through and approve the document. So once you've got it uploaded, you'd hit the upload, and then you'll see underneath that the document name will show up, so you know that it's been attached, and then you just need to hit next step. Once you've hit the next step, it's going to ask you, what do you want to do with this document? What's the workflow you want to set up? You can choose a 1-2 steps. What that does is it just brings up 2 names of people that are already currently on your team to send it through the workflow. If you pick the custom, you can send it through as many people as you need and have people that aren't specifically assigned to your team, anyone that has an Active Directory ID. So that's some of the value. If you want to go for like a design exception, you need to get it up to the pre-construction central with George's group. You can assign George. He might not be part of your project team, so you'd want to use that custom one. And same thing with using John Leonard and other people that need to sign those documents. And they will show up on their My Sites and let them know that they have an activity. They'll get the emails. We don't want this to be the only communication that you have with those people, that the document needs to be signed. It's just another reminder for them and something that you can track to say, yes, it has been signed or it hasn't been signed. You can find exactly where it's at and what it's waiting on. So what I did is I chose the 1-2 workflow just for demonstration purposes. What I can do is you can say who you're going to send it to first, what date you want it due by, and then which people that need to sign it. And then you can go to the next, who goes after that, who needs the next approval, what due date you're giving them, and then assign it to those people. And then you hit next step, and then it runs through the process. It sends them the emails and goes through that. Right now, the system's set up to send a due date for each person. It's not set just for a final due date. And the idea there is just to try to make sure that we give people enough time as it goes through. And so the one person doesn't hold on to it for the 2-week period and the last person only has 1 day. So we're hoping that those due dates will help push people to try to get signatures on it. The next part of those projects page is we understand that all of our projects, their tasks aren't going to just be inside of PMO. They're not going to be on that schedule. So sometimes there's tasks that are not related that you still want to be able to track. So underneath this task section, you can come up to the upcoming tasks and you click on add task, and you can make any task that you want and assign it to anyone on your team that's not part of PMO, but they'll still get the reminders that they need to do that task. The only difference is it doesn't have a start date for them. It has when it needs to be done by. There's not a weekly update that they need to go do and say what percentage they are. All it is here's your end date, tell me you got it done. And that's just to try to help us on some of those tasks that we need to track that aren't being tracked in the schedule. Because we don't want to make the schedule so complex, but sometimes we need to track something specifically that comes up on the project. So this will allow you to do that. So all you do is go hit add task, it'll pop up, ask you what you want the task name to be, what start date, what end date you want to give it, and who you're going to assign it to. And then all they have to do is go in and status it as complete. There's no what percent are you done once it's done. You click the save button, and that goes ahead and saves and gets pushed out to their My Sites. So all this information is going to show on their My Sites. It'll show all the tasks that are assigned in PMO. It'll show all the tasks that are assigned from teams and all the tasks that are assigned from these projects pages, all in one place. There is a start date you put in here, but it doesn't show on their My Sites. The My Sites just pops up and shows them the finish date, when it needs to be due by. So we put in a start date so it pops up on their screen at the right time, but they don't ever see the start date coming in because it just shows up on their list of tasks they need to be doing by the start date that you gave. So they don't ever see that, if that makes sense. The last part is meeting agendas. The thing that's nice about these meeting minutes is you can go in and make a template of your typical meetings that you run. Once you've done that and you're holding your meeting, during that meeting, if you have something that comes up based on that agenda, you can assign a task directly from that agenda to that person, which would be a project-specific task that they have to follow through with that gives them a completion date. And so as you're in your meeting, you can go ahead and write the action items, what you're assigning people off to do, and then that will show up on their My Sites, those tasks that you're assigning off. So you're not having to rework, and you're making sure people are following through with the action items that you've given them. Consultants all have, if they have access to PMO, they'll have an Active Directory ID and be able to be used in these same activities. So all of Udot employees already have it, and if they've already been accessed into PMO and using that site, they'll have access to all of these things once they're chosen. Unless they're assigned, they won't be able to see all of this information. It's up to the project managers to create these sites and then to give them access rights to them. As soon as you give them access rights, they can go make the agendas, they can go do things like that also. But it all is predicated on whether the project manager wants to use these project sites or not. This isn't a requirement at this time. It's just something that you guys can use as another tool to help you guys out as you're trying to manage your projects. So that's basically these new projects pages. There'll be more detail given later in a presentation by Carrie Ann this afternoon. She'll be doing one that talks on the pre-construction and how each of these things work. We just wanted to give you a quick overview of what these projects pages are. They're new, they're something you can use. I find that there's plenty of things that will be helpful to be able to manage your project and make sure things are going and happening on time. The next thing that we wanted to talk about is project scheduling, the reports to it. We've had plenty of questions come up over this last year on what exactly are these reports doing and how do they work. I know that some of the regions are using these reports, so we just want to make sure that you guys understand exactly what's happening so you don't feel like you're getting beat up at all from them and your project teams understand them. So the first report that we want to talk about is the project status report. Most of you guys have seen this. It has the dial on it. It has our percent completes, our schedule, how far along it's gone. The first thing I want to talk about is this past due. We noticed that a lot of our projects are showing as past due, even though they're really not past due. Part of that problem is a project shows up on this active status report until the project is completed every single item on that project. So you need to make sure that your project's gone through and statused every task is 100% if it truly is done. Even milestones. That's where we kept getting lost is milestones normally don't have someone assigned to them, but there's still an activity and it still counts towards the percent complete overall. So for it to be removed from this, you need to make sure that you go in and status every single activity as 100%. And then it'll remove from this list and it won't be showing as past due anymore, won't be hurting your score at all. Another issue with the past due is if you add in tasks after your advertising, they still need to be updated, they still need to be done, and it won't show past due anymore. It was originally. We've got it reprogrammed to where it's not going to, because it was keying off the 5Z2 date, and now it's going to key off the last date in the schedule as what says it's past due or not. So just so you guys are aware of that. The next part on this report is the date right here advertised. So it's red right now. What that red date means is that you have missed your CAD date, so your committed advertised date. So anytime you see in the advertising column that one of those dates have gone red, it means you're missing your committed advertised date. That's being calculated off of that 5Z2 or the submit for advertised date. And that puts it on that Saturday that it's supposed to be on. So some people were thinking that that was supposed to be, your advertised date was supposed to be your submit date. But you got to realize that when we do our commit dates, it's doing that calculation to add on the days it needs based on your submit to give it on that Saturday. So it's going to compare apples to apples. So just make sure if it's showing red, that means you need to pull your 5Z2 back or you're going to miss your committed advertised date. And then you'll have to do your lovely explaining, which I know all the PMs love doing. The next one on this report is if it has an NA. So if underneath the advertising date it has an NA, that doesn't mean that the project just doesn't have an advertising date set. What that means is it's a procurement type job. So underneath the 510 screen in EPM, you've gone in under delivery method and have picked a non-advertising. You've picked the other, you've picked whatever you've picked, procurement, and then you've not checked the box that says will advertise. And that's what's making it so it has an NA on this report. We still track those projects, so you still need to make sure that those are completed. But the date that's showing here for the submit for advertised date next to it is actually a finish date. That's the finish date of when construction is going to be completed on that procurement project. And that's something that's different because we're always used to when we advertise it. Well, with procurement type projects or studies, we're waiting until it's actually completed, till all of that construction's done. So make sure in your schedules that represents the latest date. That's what that finished date's representing. The next part is over here you can see that we have a schedule calendar percent complete, and it's showing orange. The reason it's gone orange is that there's a 15% discrepancy between the green and between the green column, which is the activity percent complete, and the calendar. So what it is time. We're from the start date of the project to the end date of the project, we're just measuring straight time. And then the other column, what it's measuring is what activities have been statused at. So if the activities haven't been status as far along as they need to be, you'll see that this goes orange. It's just a quick indicator to project managers. They need to go into their project and see what's going on, see what activities are maybe falling behind. It might just be that one of their resources hasn't statused an activity far enough along, or something else has happened. It's just an indicator for our project managers to understand, but that will bring down your score. So on this next page, you can see that we have this active project score. That score is calculated off of that percentages scheduled versus the percentage complete. You get 1 point if you have less than 15% difference between the two. If you have greater than 15%, but not less than 25, you get a half a point. And if you're over 25, you get 0 points. And all it's doing is taking every single project that that project manager or region has and adding up all those points and then taking an average and giving you a score. It was something that was developed by, I know that some of the regions are using it to make sure that something's being updated, but I don't know if Region 4, are you guys even using the report at all to look and see if the two are separated? Okay. Okay. No, and I can agree with that. That what really matters are the two columns. The score was just to give you a quick overview of, is there something wrong? If it's at 100, you know you got nothing going on. If it's not, there's something you need to go look into deeper on the other report. I have seen hundreds, but it takes the project manager the day of usually to be able to get it at exactly 100. You can call me and I'm sure I can get it there. It's not too out there. But anyways, we can take a look at that. The gauge isn't the important part. The gauge, what's important is you're looking at the report to see the two differences. Is your thing being actively managed? Are people updating where they're at? That's the most important part. And that you can tell from like what you guys have said is based off of these two, looking at the two bars and comparing them against each other. The next reports I want to talk about are some things that might be helpful in preparing for a meeting or using in your guys' team meetings. Those reports that I want to pull up are a 3-week look ahead, a project overview report, a calendar view, a late and a critical tasks, so you can see as a project manager what's going on with your project. So I'm going to pull up in project. We'll go back to the main page that you guys are used to seeing. So here's just your basic schedule that you guys are all used to seeing. I don't know if he set one up. No, that's not it. He's got it keying off my desktop but not showing. It's on there. There we go. Thank you, Fred. There we go. So now we're used to seeing these type of schedules. What it is I just want to show some reports that are built in from project that you can go use and see. So the first one is a view. I know I've shown it before. If you want to find out what tasks are happening in the next 3 weeks, what's being worked on, all you do is come in here and go to date range underneath the view and underneath this filter. You're going to pick date range. What it's going to do is pick when do you want to start this window that you're looking into. So I'm just going to pick today's date. And then when do you want it to end? You could be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever you want as the project manager or as the team that you find to be useful. So I'm going to pick 3 weeks or 4 weeks. I'm not sure what that was. And all it's going to do is filter out all the tasks to which ones are being worked on in the next, that have any work being done in the next 4 weeks. So if I go down through this list, that's all it is tasks that currently have that. Real basic. You can email that out to your team. They can see what's going on. The next report is the project overview report. So I'm going to remove the filter. Underneath this report tab inside of Project Professional, underneath this dashboards, there's this project overview. This project overview report can be printed, emailed out. What it does is it says overall the project, gives you what percentage you're done. You're 35% done. It gives you your milestone dates, so what dates you plan on all those milestones occurring. It also gives you all of your tasks that are late and what's going on with them on a quick overview. And then it gives you some of your percentages complete on tasks that are upcoming. It's just a quick report that you can send out. You can modify these. If you come in here, there's different ways to modify what you want to be showing. You can adjust them to however you want, and once you save it, it saves those settings for that project. Not for all the ones you're going to open in the future, but just to that project that you're currently working on. Another report underneath this report section, underneath in progress, you can go look at what is my critical path. So you click on the critical tasks. It's going to list every single critical task project that you have on there. And it's going to list when it starts, when it finishes, what percent, and what status of your critical path you are. So here's what's been completed, here's what's late, and here's what's future tasks of your critical. So you can kind of see how your critical chain's going and see how that path's working through. Another report that we have in there is the late tasks. It just gives you a quick overview of what your late tasks are, and out of your overall tasks, how many are complete, what's in the future, what's late. It's just a quick view for the project manager to see if anything's going not correctly on the project. The last thing is another view. There's this calendar view. What it does is you can pick a month, and it's going to put on a calendar all the activities that are occurring on that date. The only challenge that you have, if you have a date that has 10 or so activities, it's only going to show what the calendar fits. So if you do the month and it has a smaller square, you can't see it. All the tasks that really belong there until you bring it down to weeks. Once you bring it to weeks, then you can see that more tasks will show up. That's the hard view, but if you're having something that's a little spread out, it's easier for people to understand how tasks are working based on a calendar. They can just see a bar going across, this is when I'm supposed to be working on that task, when they look at their weekly load. Those are the reports that I wanted to show. So we'll go back to the presentation. The last report to talk about, not really to show, is we have this milestone report that's found inside of PMO. What it does is it goes into each one of your guys' projects and pulls out all of the milestone dates that you guys have for the meetings. So when are you having your scoping meeting? When are you having your geometry meeting, plan in hand, your PS&E? And it goes in and finds out what date that meeting's supposed to be occurring on. It has when the committed advertised date, milestone, when your submit for advertised date is. It brings in all of that information. FHWA is looking at this to find out when you guys are holding some of your meetings. They use this information to determine some of the meetings they're going to come to. So as a project manager, it's really important that you're making sure that you don't bypass some of these milestones. I know that sometimes we want to just make sure that the SAD date's right, and we don't worry as much about the date of the meeting occurring. Preferably, if we can make sure that the meeting's at least in the right week, that'll help out everyone to make sure that our QC is being done correctly and that FHWA knows when we're actually holding these meetings. It's something that they are looking at. I just want to make that something that our PMs know, that it's important that we make sure those meetings are within that week that we're planning on holding them. We know it might not be a perfect date because things just around as we're trying to get rooms, but to at least make your schedule as accurate as possible to make sure that we're showing within that week when that meeting's to be held. That's the last of the reporting. I'm going to turn the time over to Mindy, and she's going to talk about some of the things that we've set up in the system that are required so that you guys can make sure that what you want to occur on the project is actually showing in the system. So I'll turn the time over to Mindy.
Okay, so we're going to talk about project scheduling triggers. Some of you are familiar with this, some of you are not. I know I've talked to a few consultants that can you hear me okay? Can you hear me better now? Okay. I'll try to speak up as much as I can. But the project scheduling triggers that happen within the project schedule, we're going to talk about advertised versus non-advertised projects. On the EPM 510 screen for the advertised projects, when you check mark the the pin will advertise box, it'll open up the SAD date information as well as the advertising and construction dates that you see on the 510 screen in the middle section here. And actually, I'm not as savvy as Kendall is, but anyway, so for advertised projects, the 5Z2 code for the submit for advertised date on the project schedule will pull into the EPM 510 screen and show that information. If a project schedule has multiple 5Z2 codes, the first 5Z2 code that you put in your project schedule is what will appear on the date on the 510 screen. We've seen project schedules where there's multiple 5Z2 codes listed, and people think that the 5Z2 codes are all going to populate, but it's only going to populate that first 5Z2 code SAD date on the 510 screen. And also, if there is no 5Z2 code on the project schedule, the latest finish date of the task or the last task that you have, the finish date, that's what will show in the SAD date. For non-advertised projects, if you uncheck the pin will advertise checkbox on the 710 screen in EPM, it will remove the advertising and construction dates. So all you see within EPM you'll see like a work start date. Work start date, sorry. Under the project schedule section, and it will remove the advertising and construction day sections. As a project manager, when you go to link your project schedule to the project server through PMO, there is a list of templates that Kendall and Brian Allen have worked on a while ago. And those templates, the templates that are listed A through E, they all have the WS activity code on those templates. So when you go and select that, if you just want to show a work start date, those are the templates that you're going to select. And again, the work start date in EPM, it does come from the task start date with the WS activity code. If an advertised schedule has a WS activity code, it will show on the 510 screen as a non-advertised project. If you don't want to show it as a non-advertised project, you need to remove the WS activity code in the project schedule. And here again, we're talking about the work completion date on the 510 screen, where it comes from the end date in a project schedule. Trying to think, okay. I'm kind of skipping through this. A lot of you are aware of how that works. For categorical exclusion, the way the categorical exclusion works, and people get confused about this, for a consultant or a Udot employee to have access or to be able to complete the CADX documentation within EPM, it's driven through the user's EPM profile. So they have to have like a user profile set up so they can see the CADX information. But what happens on the project schedule, People think that just assigning them to the 3E1 CADX activity code for the categorical exclusion, I can't say that, they think that's what will give them access. But there's two parts to it. On the project schedule, as long as you assign somebody to that project schedule, that actually opens up the view information within EPM. Just assigning them to the CADX is not going to give them full access. Again, their EPM user profile has to be set up so that they can access the CADX information. So you can assign them to the 3E1 activity, you can assign them to any task on that project schedule, but as long as they have their EPM user profile configured, that's what's going to kind of drive that access so that they can complete the CADX documentation. Within EPM, under their user access account, it would be EPM support that has to set that up for them. He was asking he was asking if the PM had to set up that access, but it's actually EPM support. We're the ones that assign profile, like the different profiles to user accounts that gives them that access. And that's what I'm kind of basically explaining on this screen. Oops, let me just go back just one second. On this screen, and one thing that is confusing to people, once they get assigned to the CADX on a project schedule, they have to, within the CADX or on the CADX screen, they have to hit their enter key to populate the additional fields across the top. So that information or that documentation that they fill out, it won't populate. So when they get in there and they get into EPM to do the CADX, some people don't know they'll see the info tab at the beginning, but they don't know they have to hit their enter key to get the rest of the tabs to populate to fill in that CADX information. Again, this is they just choose their document type, and once they do that or they hit their enter key, then the remaining tabs will populate. And now I'm going to turn it over to Kendall again to discuss the project schedule archiving.
So just a quick thing on this. The reason we're talking about archiving is a lot of people ask me, why is my project still showing up? Why hasn't it gone away? I'm done with this project. It's well past, it's in construction. I don't want to deal with this thing anymore. Why is it still showing on my screens? So we want to make sure that you guys understand how the archiving process works to make sure that you can get those projects that are supposed to be gone off your list. So the biggest thing is, again, just like on the project status report, everything inside the schedule must be marked as 100%. What I'll do is go show you inside of a project. There is this project summary. So if you go to click in the Gantt chart, so we'll go back. So once you go into project and you're at your Gantt chart, up at the top you'll see this Gantt chart tools and format. Once you click on that format, underneath this show hide, you'll see project summary task. Once you check that, what comes up is a line 0. That line 0 represents all the data underneath it, so the whole project's data. This is what is important when you go to the column for percent complete. You want to make sure that that shows as 100%. If that line doesn't show as 100%, it won't archive. Most of the time what it is your milestones weren't marked and it'll say 99%. And it's because it's waiting for those 4 or 5 milestones to be marked as 100%. But that's the key, is this being marked as 100%. As soon as that's marked as 100%, it'll be removed from PMO. Nothing will be showing in PMO. But it still will show when you go to your file, open, and your Udot. When you hit that show me a list of all projects, it'll still show on that list, even if it's marked as 100%. The way to get it off of this list is it must change the status inside of EPM. So it must be marked as 100% and then move from awarded to under construction, or under construction to physically complete. It must make a move. because that's what it's keying off of, is there's been a change in its status. Then it goes and looks to see if it's 100% done. That's the only way it'll get removed from this list. Exactly, to move from this list. Inside of PMO, they'll all be off of it. But inside of project, it'll still show. It won't go. It has to be before it changes status, because that's when it goes to look to see if it's 100% done, is each of those status changes. And then it'll archive, and then it's off the system out of everywhere. And the only way to get it back is contacting myself or Mindy to have it get pulled from the archive. Otherwise, you guys have no view rights, nothing. Everything else is gone from that project until you need it back. You have to access it through us, re-bring it back into the system. So, like if you guys have a re-advertising project that's been archived and you want to add on to that other schedule, we can pull it back out so you can add on the other activities you're having to do to be able to re-advertise that project. That's the important thing about the archiving, is just understanding it's waiting for a change inside of EPM for its status, and then it needs to be marked 100% before it makes that change, and then it'll archive out of the system. If you're just wanting it off the reports, wanting it off of your PMO site, everything just has to be marked as 100% in that project. Otherwise, it'll still be showing up inside of PMO. That's the important parts of archiving. I know that sometimes it's pain looking through all that list, so it's better to get these off when you can. If it's truly done, just make sure you go in and status everything. Now we'll go back to the presentation. So this is just kind of summarizing what I went over. All of our milestones must be marked as 100% every activity. We're waiting for that change, such as awarded to under construction or advertised to award. As soon as it gets to closed status in EPM, it automatically gets removed and archived. So if you want to wait clear until that time, your projects will fall off at the close no matter what, even if everything wasn't statused. Just because at that point the project's no longer an active project that has anything going on with it. And again, if you need to recover any projects that have been archived, please contact Mindy or myself, and we'll be able to help you guys be able to get those projects back into the system. I'll turn the time back over to Mindy, and she'll talk a little about local resources and some of the emails you might have been seeing sent to you guys PMs, and how to deal with those emails that have been coming out.
Okay, so local resources. Recently, and Doug, you can kind of attest to this. I'm going to use you as an example. What happens for the local resource assignment that's set up as far as pulling the enterprise resources? All of the EPM user account information imports from EPM into the project management office application. And people don't understand that. But what happens is, for us, we have to apply the Active Directory network ID for that user to their EPM user account in order to get them to import into PMO. There is a process that we go through to get, especially for our consultants that are working on a project schedule, that they don't have their account set up. What we've configured in the system, and some of you project managers have probably seen an email message come from me that says, so-and-so has been assigned as a resource on this project. You're not set up to access the PMO application. You need to set up your account on the network, and then we also need to get your information imported into the system. What happens when within EPM, if a user doesn't have their Active Directory account assigned to their EPM profile, the system automatically triggers an email message that comes to me, and it also goes to the EPM support box. But it tells us, okay, this user or this project manager has assigned this user to this project schedule, and they can't access PMO. So that's when you guys start to see those email messages come from me or from EPM support. I do both. Like, I'll send from both, either my personal email or from the EPM support box. informing the consultant that they need to set up their account information on the network. If that resource or that user is not importing into PMO, the project schedule will reflect an error message. So when you go to save and publish that project schedule, you'll get an error message saying the following local resources were removed from project ABC on pin 12345, gives a description, and that was on your last check-in. And then if you've assigned multiple people with their accounts aren't set up correctly, it'll show the list of those people that are not coming through correctly. And usually, when I get that, it's not that I'm looking at your project schedules or I'm tracking what you're doing. So I don't want everybody to panic when I send you an email message. But normally I can catch those requests pretty quick and process that information so that we can get them set up so they can go in and do their activity updates and their activity setup within PMO or through Project Professional. Okay, the next issue that we've been seeing are password issues. And this is kind of, it's become a challenge to the consultants, and I feel bad for the consultants. Where we have consultants that work both as a Udot project manager and as a consultant, they have to have 2 accounts in EPM to access different information based on the role that they're taking on. And then they have to have 2 accounts within PMO, which means they also have to have 2 accounts in Active Directory. And this is going to be hard to explain, but I'm gonna do my best. So I hope everybody can hear this. The passwords or the passwords for PMO, since they're driven through Active Directory, they will expire every 90 days, same as it does for Udot employees. Network Services has set up, they have a password recovery website where the consultant can go out there and they can manage their own password information. So there's 2 sites. There's an ongoing password maintenance, which is the https login.utah.gov, which is what as Udot employees, we're all familiar with. And then the password recovery is the same site, except there's a /user/recover at the end. I don't know if I should use this as an example or not. But I'll tell you this anyway. So those people that have had or that have 2 different accounts on the network, when they go out there and they set up their network information, they have to put in their email address and then an alternate email address. Just recently, we've found out the alternate email address that they use for their account, it will send information back to them with a recovery code, like a password recovery code, so they can reset their password. And I don't know I wish Andrew Gemperline was here. But on the login.utah.gov site, they do have an option to enter a cell phone number instead of an alternate email address. But what happens when they have 2 accounts, they end up having to input 4 different email addresses when they do their password recoveries. But if they enter a cell phone, the system is set up to send them a text message with a password recovery code instead of putting in an alternate email address. And then that way they can recover their password on the network on their own. So some of you may start seeing email messages come from me. Excuse me, if you have a consultant that can't log into the system, and of course, I'm getting invaded. But you might see email messages where I'm either directing the user to a password recovery. If I can see on the network that their email addresses and everything is set up, then I may have them go to the login.utah.gov and edit their own password information. I know that's probably confusing to a lot of people. It's confusing to the consultants, and I wish there was a better way that we could manage that, but Active Directory is not really set up to be kind of a profile management type. Well, it is kind of a profile management, but it's not set up to be a user account information kind of system. But anyway, that's it. Does anybody have any questions in regards to that information? Or any questions in general? Yeah, we have no control over that. That's actually a security measure that was implemented by DTS. And that's pretty common in companies outside of Udot. It's a statewide security policy. Does anyone have any other questions? Do you want to stand up?
Just something to know about that as a consultant. If you type in your password and it pops back up and just blank, that's a good sign your password's expired. That's the biggest sign is if you're trying to log in, you know you typed it in correctly and it just pops up back blank, that means your password's expired. That means you need to go do the recovery process. You can either contact Mindy or myself. PMs, if you hear someone saying, I can't get into the system, I don't know what's going on, most likely it's their password's expired now. And every 90 days they're going to have to go in and reset their password. It's not a beautiful process, but that's the biggest key to you guys is just to know if it popped back up, they need to go get their password recovered.
Just goes straight through. Sorry. Okay, does everybody hear that? Sorry, I probably don't need the mic. I'm loud. But yes, I'll just repeat it. If for UDOT employees specifically, you'll still be able to get into your Gmail, your utah.gov account, if your password's expired. You won't be able to get into anything that uses Active Directory. So if your password keeps popping up, it looks like it's expired when you're trying to get into PMO, but you can still get into your email, there's still a good chance that your password's expired.
One other thing to note is it will also affect your access to Project Professional. So all of those are all driven Interchange, PMO. PMO is a subsite of the Interchange main site. Project Professional, if a consultant can't get in, chances are their password just needs to be reset on the network.
So just to finalize, please contact me or Mindy if you have any questions on any of this information. There also will be this afternoon a presentation by Carrie Ann on the interchanges. You'll learn about the construction side and the pre-construction sites. Learn a little bit more about the My sites and exactly how that entails to teams and to you guys as users and what you can use them for. So I just want to thank everyone for coming out. And again, please contact us if you have any question. Our contact information's up there. Thanks.
Did the